Torah Dach Yomi Daf Yudalid Amud Gimel, finishing the Maimer Pasach Eliyahu, and we're in the middle of explaining how Hashem made the world of Atzilus and the world of Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah, and that from Hashem's Chachma, the way that it's in Atzilus, to come to us, to be that Hashem's wisdom that He created, which is His wisdom, should come to be our wisdom, should be something we can understand, as to come to a parsa, which we said that's like a mashal. When you have a teacher that he's very great and very smart, in order for him to give it over to the student, he can't give it directly because the student wouldn't be able to understand. He has to give an analogy, he has to give a mashal, and from that mashal, from that analogy, the student will be able to figure out what was the lesson that the teacher wanted to teach him. But the way that the student understands it is obviously a different way of understanding it than the way the teacher himself understands it. But it's the same type of idea. So the same thing, Hashem's wisdom in Atzilus is much higher than something we can directly understand. But through the parsa, Hashem gives it over to us in a way that we could understand. Hashem expresses it through things that have to relate to created beings, things that exist in the world of the created beings, so that we can also have an understanding about the truth of Hashem and His unity. But it's obviously a new way of learning about the unity of Hashem. But it's not a different topic, it's the same topic, except that it's the way that we are understanding about Hashem's unity. So this is what we're speaking about now. In the original Torah on Yud Dalid Amud Gimel, 5 lines from the top. And therefore, Bria, the world of the created beings, is called Yishmayayin, that it comes from something completely incomparable. It's something completely different. Why is it different? Because it comes to this current, it comes to this separation, Shahaya or Shaltalada, which means that it's a light it's coming from an original light. It's coming a new type of light. Like we said, the light that comes through a curtain, the quality of the light is changed. That is created the light of the knowledge of Bria, that we can understand this in a new way. Like when you have the teacher and the student, that the way that the student understands this idea from this mashal, from this analogy, is a new type of understanding. But from that he understands about what the teacher wanted to teach him. So this is a new way of understanding that the student has. So too, this light, this type of knowledge that we have about Hashem, this revelation of Hashem that we have, is a new type of revelation, new type of understanding about Hashem that comes about through this parsa, through the separation between Atzilus and Bria. V'hinei hamaskil yavin shes almus has-seichel shel rav b'derech hamashal she'omer l'talmid hu shekol chachmasai be'atzmusai hu melubash b'mashal zeh v'lo b'koyach levad el b'poel mamish. So you can realize and figure out that what the teacher is trying to give over to the student is his whole entire wisdom. He's not just giving him a different lesson, he's not teaching him something else. The whole lesson that he wants to give over is expressed and in that analogy that he's giving him. And it's there in actuality. In that analogy is the whole depth of the wisdom that he's trying to give over. Lekach haskal sarab b'inyan shemramis boy in haskala hahi niris v'niglis hatalmid el al pi hamashal shu inyan acher amemena mischadesh le'aseichel ad shenikra etz le'aseichel chadash aval mikol makom haseichel chadash ezeh b'mehus v'etzmusay kivar hayel lamim v'merumaz hakoil b'mashal. So this, since the wisdom that the teacher is trying to give over to the student is being expressed through an analogy, which is a different way of speaking than the way that he's thinking to himself. In other words, the teacher himself, he's thinking over this idea to himself in his own language. And the way that he's giving it over to the student is using the language of this analogy. So since he's using this different language of the analogy, so it's being expressed in a different manner. And only through that language of the analogy can the student come to have this understanding. So he comes to have a new type of understanding through the analogy. But it's not a new topic, it's not a new kind of idea, it's just a new way of looking at the same idea from the perspective of the student. But the idea really existed always, it's really the same idea that the teacher had originally. So too, the way that Hashem expresses His wisdom, this truth of Hashem, of Hashem's unity, to us through the parsa, which creates what's called Chachma Bria, the way that we look at Hashem. That Hashem's wisdom, that wisdom itself that Hashem has, the way that Hashem understands about Himself, that's what's being expressed through this parsa to us, and causes that we should be able to understand about Him. So even though it's a new type of understanding about Hashem, but still, it's not something completely incomparable to Chachma Vatzilus. It's not a completely new type of wisdom. It's the same type of wisdom. Whereas the tzimtzum that Hashem made on His infinite light, that there should be Atzilus, this is a completely different type of expression of Hashem. And that's what's called Chad v'B'chushban. So what are we saying? So just like when you have the teacher and the student comes to have a new type of understanding through the analogy the teacher is giving to him. So it's not a new topic, it's the same idea, it's just the way the student is understanding it through the analogy. So too, the knowledge and understanding about Hashem's unity, the way that He understands it in Chachma V'Tzilus, the way that's coming to us through the parsa, it's not a new topic, it's not a new type of idea. It's the same idea, it's just the way that we're able to understand about that through the parsa. So that's called Chachma Debriya. So it's not completely different from Hashem's Chachma, from Chachma V'Tzilus, even though it's a much higher type of wisdom, Hashem's Chachma, but it's the same type of wisdom that we're able to figure out about the truth of Hashem. So too, the way that Hashem is putting His Chachma V'Tzilus through the parsa, that there should be our Chachma, the Hashem's Chachma V'Tzilus, that itself is expressed and is there in the parsa, in what we're able to understand. And that's what's creating Chachma of Bria. That's what's creating our type of understanding about Hashem. So Chachma of Bria, even though it's a new light, it's a new type of understanding, but it's still connected to Chachma V'Tzilus. It's still just an extension of Chachma V'Tzilus, the way that we're able to understand it. Whereas the tzimtzum of Oren Seif, that there should be Atzilus, that's a completely different kind of process, where the whole light is being taken away. And that's why it's called Chad v'B'chushban. So in other words, the tzimtzum is like when you have a teacher that his wisdom is so different than the ability of the student to receive, that he has to completely remove his entire way of thinking and create a new type of way of thinking that the student could be able to relate to. So he first has to take away his entire way of thinking, because as long as he's thinking in that way, then there's no way that he can give it over to the student at all. So he has to completely remove his whole entire way of thinking and come up with a new way of thinking that the student can relate to. That's like the tzimtzum, that Hashem has to remove completely the revelation of His infinite truth, the infinite truth of Hashem, in order that there should be able to be a revelation of Hashem to us that we can relate to. So that's called Chad v'lo b'chushban. It's one, but not as part of a series. It's one and removed. meaning,
Singular.
Yeah, it's singular. It's unique and removed. That Hashem's way of thinking, Hashem's perspective, his infinite way of looking at things, is so much higher than Atzilus that he has to remove it. It's unique, it's singular, and above Hashem's way that he made Atzilus, which is the source of how we can think. So even though we're saying that Hashem is infinite and his light is infinite, and he has to make this whole tzimtzum in order there should be Atzilus, but the 10 spheres of Atzilus, they're not removed from him. It's not like Hashem made something else which is separate and removed from himself. The 10 spheres of Atzilus is the way that Hashem is coming into limitation, is coming into a level that he can relate to us. That they're not separate from him, even though they're completely incomparable. Even though these are finite, the level of Atzilus and all the aspects of Atzilus, of Hashem's wisdom and Hashem's kindness and severity, that they're all finite aspects, finite attributes, whereas Hashem is infinite. So how are they an extension of him? How can something finite be an expression of something which is infinite? They're apparently completely different things. So we're going to say two ideas, which through those two ideas we're able to understand this a little bit. The first idea is that we're still included in the source. That the whole tzimtzum, this whole process of Hashem removing his light, is just from our perspective, that we're not able to see the infinite light. But it's not that it went away, it's not that it's not here. Really, Hashem is a true existence, and Hashem is everywhere, and everything exists inside of Hashem. There's nothing outside of Hashem. Everything that exists is existing inside of him, and it's also existing in Hashem's infinite light. Because if it's infinite, then it's everywhere. So it must be here also. So really, Atzilus is existing inside of Hashem, and everything existing inside of Hashem. So it's not really separate from him. That's the first idea. Then we're going to say another idea. And then Hashem made a kavachut, which through that it becomes unite with him in a deeper manner. What does that mean?
Interstate highway.
Interstate highway, that's right. Making an interstate highway. So the first idea is we have to realize that we're still included inside of Hashem. That from Hashem's perspective, we're still inside of him, and so that's the real truth. But what about from our perspective? Do we see that? The answer is, we could see that to a certain extent. That's called the kav v'chut. The kav means that Hashem made a limited revelation of himself to us, which through that we become united with him, and even from our perspective. From Hashem's perspective, everything is always united with him. The kav v'chut means there's a revelation of Hashem that we should see how we're united with him also. And in that type of revelation of Hashem, there's a difference between Atzilus and Bri Yetziras here. There's a difference between the way that Hashem relates to himself in Atzilus and the way that he relates to us as created beings. That in Atzilus is revealed how it's nothing separate from him in the first place. That it's completely united with him. Whereas in the created worlds, even though Hashem is creating us, but we feel that we're separate from him. So that's the difference in the kav, in Hashem's relation to us, from our perspective, between Atzilus and the created worlds, is that in Atzilus you see how it's united with Hashem, and in our world you don't see it's united with Hashem. So that's called the kav v'chut. So in Atzilus, now, so the Alter is going to give a mashal. After the end of this paragraph, we're going to explain the mashal the Alter gives, how Atzilus, even though it's a world and it's limited, it's Hashem's wisdom and Hashem's kindness, Hashem's severity, all these finite things, but how all these finite things are still unified and connected to the infinite truth of Hashem. So we're saying that this kav v'chut, this revelation of Hashem, of how it's united with him, is expressed in Atzilus, v'afil and hagav han almin, even to guide worlds. What does it mean to guide worlds, to create worlds? Almin him b'chinas kelim. The worlds are the kelim, meaning Hashem's attributes, the way that they're in Atzilus. Taf alef almin dechsuf in chulu. B'atzilus yuvachal yechad afilu v'chinas kelim. In Atzilus, not only is Hashem's revelation a part united with him. In other words, not only do you see that Hashem is revealing himself, but Hashem's attributes are Hashem's attributes. It's Hashem's wisdom and Hashem's kindness, Hashem's severity. also a revelation of Hashem. וכמשל דבר גשמי נספס במחשבה שמחשבות זה מקבץ אפילו גשמי כאבן דמם הגם שאין המשל דמם של לא ימיני חולו. We say like this: when a person is thinking about an idea in his mind, he's thinking about a stone. So in his mind, there's a stone. Now, is there actually a stone in his mind? There's the idea of a stone, but in his mind there is a stone. Now that stone, how much is it a part of the person? On the one hand, you could say that it's not really a part of the person. It's just an idea about a stone. But on the other hand, he's thinking about this stone. So it's not something outside of him. It's his own thoughts that he's thinking to himself. It's just, what is he thinking about? He's thinking about a stone. But it's all his thoughts. It's all inside his own head. So it's nothing separate from him. So what does that mean? It means that this person has something which from itself is really not the person. A stone is not a person. But because he's thinking about it, it is a part of him because it's his thoughts. He's thinking about this stone. So through in his thoughts, he can take something which is not originally a part of him, and now it is a part of him. It's part of his thoughts. So the same thing, Hashem himself is infinite. And Hashem made his finite revelation in Atzilus, that he relates to us through his wisdom and his kindness and his severity. But since Hashem is thinking about these attributes, these are Hashem's attributes that he's making and he's expressing himself, so they become his. They become a part of him. Just like the person's thoughts about the stone is his own thoughts, so too Hashem's attributes in Atzilus are his attributes. Even though they're finite, they're in a direct expression of him. And so they're an extension and expression of Hashem himself. וכמשל דבר גשמי נספס במחשבה שמחשבות זה מקבץ אפילו גשמי כאבן דמים הגם שאין המשל דברים של לא מיני חולו מקום קצץ מן הקצץ יכול המשכיל להסבינן ולהשכיל דרך הנמשל מן המשל הזה כי כשם שיש כוח ויכולת במחשבה להקיבץ הדבר הגשמי בשכל אם היה זה דבר נפרד ממנו ממש ואין ערך אליו מקום יש כוח המחבר ליוס דבר הגשמי מוקף במחשבה שבמויח. That even though the way that Hashem unites himself with Atzilus is not exactly like the way that a person unites himself with a stone in his thought, but you can understand a few points of this analogy. That even though the stone is not a person, and it's something completely separate from a person, but through that he's thinking about the stone, it becomes a part of his thought, which is a part of him. So too above, Hashem has the power to unify his expression, his relation in Atzilus, that it should be a part of him and nothing separate from him. That he's thinking about this, it's his attributes, it's his Atzilus, that he united with himself, so it's nothing separate from him. That we can't figure that exactly in our world. In other words, we can only understand about if you have the thought of a stone, that it could be a thought which is part of your head, that there could actually be a stone that could be existing in your thought, an actual physical stone, that should exist in your thought and become a part of you. That we can't imagine, right? That could be a problem, right? But that's exactly what Hashem is doing. Hashem isn't just the thought of Atzilus. Before the Tzimtzum, Hashem already had a thought about making Atzilus in Ak. And before the Tzimtzum Hashem had the thought about Atzilus. We're saying the actual world of Atzilus, which has actual attributes which are finite, those are united with Hashem completely. Not just the thought about the possibility of Atzilus. The actual world of Atzilus is completely united with Hashem. Just
not physical things.
You're right, it's not a physical thing, but it's still a finite thing. Yeah. And Hashem is infinite. So for the finite aspects of Atzilus, the way that they are finite, that they should be a part of the infinite truth of Hashem and united with the infinite truth of Hashem, that's something we can't figure out exactly.
It comes from him.
Yeah, it comes from him, but it's still united with him. That would be like the actual stone existing in your mind, a physical stone existing in your mind and being a part of your mind. So that we can't figure out exactly, but at least we can understand how the thought of a stone can exist in your mind, and the same thing, The world of Atzilus exists inside of Hashem and is not separate from Him. V'v'chinas kem d'Atzilus heim taf elef almin d'chsufin, v'chinas chulu tleiser elef almin chulu. Shem mi b'chinas nimin usaras chulu. V'al derech zeh es chalkus. Hem achshav l'kama mini machshavas ani misper chulu. And all in Atzilus, there's different ways of dividing up how the world of Atzilus works. You could say that there's 10 spheres, but also says that there's 400,000, and it says that there's 13,000, whatever it is.
The spheres itself, there could be actually 11.
Whatever, but the point is that there's 10 spheres, and there's a way that it's the expression of these 10 spheres. Just like a person has 10 soul powers, and nonetheless, he has 613 parts of his body, and 613 specific ways that he revealed himself. So Atzilus has many different ways that it's expressed. Just like a person can have many thoughts. And all of these thoughts, even if a person has infinite thoughts, which is impossible because he's finite, so he can't have infinite, but if you have 1,000,000 thoughts, they're all still part of his own soul. They're all something part of him. So all these different things that are going on in Atzilus, they're all Hashem's thoughts. They're all part of Hashem and not something separate from Him. Even though Hashem is infinite and those are finite, they're still a part of Him. So now that we explained about how Atzilus is unified with Hashem, meaning Hashem's attributes are nothing separate from Him, we're going to explain what does it mean Erdana. But before we explain what's Erdana, we explain the difference between Chesed, Gevura, and Rachamim. Chad Arich, it says that Hashem's midas is Chad Arich, V'chad Ketzir, V'chad Beinani. One attribute of Hashem is called long, one is called short, and one is called in between. What does that mean? In Chesed, Nikra Arich. Kindness is called long. The Fishum is Pashim in the Ma'ila Mata Mata. It means extension. When they say Arich, it means it's extending, because it's the aspect of extension. The way that Hashem extends Himself down to us. Like water that comes from a high place and goes down to the lowest possible place. So Hashem's attribute of kindness is that He extends Himself down all the way to us. So this is explaining what we said at the beginning. What does it mean, Erdana? Where is Hashem that He's going down? What it means to say is that Hashem's attribute of kindness, which is His attribute of kindness, is extending down from the world of Atzilus, which is a world, and it's extending down into our world, to us. That's what it means going down. Right? Hashem is equal. Hashem Himself is equally everywhere. So when we say up and down, we mean Atzilus to this world. That Hashem's kindness comes from Atzilus down to this world. Ugvuros, that's called Arich. It's extension. It's extending. Hashem's kindness extending down. Ugvuros shehin mimat l'mayla. Nikra katzer. Shu mekatzer megalbil. Umagibil. Hashpa sachesed shi lefi ha'ala. Shu mimat l'mayla. What does it mean it's short? It means it makes short. It restricts and limits. Which that's Hashem. Huh?
Chesed.
Yeah, it restricts Hashem's chesed. It restricts Hashem's kindness. Huh?
Kindness.
Yeah. That the kindness should only be according to this, what they deserve. So in other words, Hashem first said, I'm going to go down, and then I'll see if, according to what they're doing, what they should get. Meaning, I'll see if according to what they're doing, the bad things that they're doing, according to that, that's what I'll give them from above to below. That the way that Hashem treats us is according to what we're doing. So if Hashem's action, if the way that Hashem treats us is the way that we act, so why did it first say Erdana, that Hashem will come and give us Haketzakasa according to the way we act? L'chora, it should be the opposite, that according to the way that we're acting, that's how Hashem treats us. So it should first say that Haketzakasa ba'ilai Erdana, according to the way that they're treating us, according to the way that the people in Sodom are acting, that's how I'll treat them. So how come it first says that Hashem is going to come down to them and it'll be according to what they're doing? The answer is because we want to say first our Yasha and then our Chayser. We want to first speak about how Hashem is creating us, and then we'll speak about how that's dependent on our actions. Because really, Hashem is always creating everything every second. So anyways, the first thing is is the way that Hashem is giving us. It's just that Hashem is saying that what I'm going to give you and how I'm going to create you is going to be dependent on your actions. So the people of Sodom, that they were very bad, because they were so bad, they don't deserve that Hashem should continue to give them good things. So what's Beinani? We said this Kitzir, this Arich, Kitzir, and Beinani. This Chesed, Gevur, Tiferes. Chesed means Hashem just gives. Gevur means Hashem doesn't give unless you deserve it. Racham, it means that really you don't deserve it, but I'll give you anyways for a different reason, because you have some kind of merit. And the people in Sodom, they didn't have any merit, so therefore that's why they were destroyed. But this is what it means, this whole process of Hashem coming down and judging, this is the way that Hashem relates to us through the world of Atzilus. So it is Hashem. Hashem is the one who's judging us, but it's the way that Hashem limits himself through the world of Atzilus. But Hashem will continue tomorrow on this with the next Maimer.